Dear students, in the last class we have read about the characteristics of benign and malignant neoplasm. Now we will study the molecular basis of carcinogenesis. There are multiple genetic and epigenetic alterations which lead to carcinogenesis, and they have a role in carcinogenesis. There is a non-lethal genetic damage. It is the most important part of carcinogenesis. The damage should be non-lethal. It should pass to the next generation. And principal targets are growth promoting proto-oncogenes, growth inhibiting tumor suppressor genes, genes regulating programmed cell death, and genes involved in DNA repair. Now there is accumulation of complementary mutations, development of cancer through the stepwise acquisition of complementary mutations. The order in which the various mutations they occur in the initiated precursor cell is not well known, and it varies from tumor to tumor. So there are many phenotypic attributes to the cancer, like it is a rapid growing tumor, it has a local invasiveness, ability to metastasize to distant sites. So these are all the phenotypic types of tumors. Then there are driver mutations which lead to development of malignant phenotype. Each phenotype, suppose the tumor has metastasis, a separate mutation will be there. Suppose the tumor is highly vascular, that it has a different type of chromosome. And suppose the tumor which was low grade malignant potential earlier now become a high grade tumor, there should be a development of a new chromosomal mutation. Only then these phenotypic variants they appear in the cancer. Then there is an initiating mutation which gives the cancer cell a stem cell like properties, which has the unlimited power of replication. Additional passenger mutations, loss of function mutation in genes maintaining genomic integrity lead to passenger mutations. Then the last is there should be survival of the cancer cell. It should survive over the normal cell. The normal cell, it takes nourishment, but the cancer cell, it takes a lot of malignant because they are rapidly proliferating cells. So they should receive nourishment, they should receive oxygen, they should receive blood supply, and the Darwin rule it follows here, which leads to survival of the fittest. This is the diagrammatic view of the acquisition of multiple mutations which lead to carcinogenesis. Then epigenetic aberrations. There are, in addition to DNA mutation, epigenetic aberrations also contribute to the malignant properties of cancer cell. Epigenetic aberrations, they occur in the DNA methylation, histone modification. Both these they lead to gene expression, determining the differentiation of normal and neoplastic cells. These changes they are reversible by drugs that inhibit DNA and histone modifying factors. So epigenetic aberrations they also play important role in carcinogenesis. Now there are a number of cellular and molecular hallmarks of malignancy. First is there is self-sufficiency of growth signal. Tumors have the capacity to proliferate without external stimuli and usually as a consequence of oncogenic activation. Then there is insensitivity to growth inhibitory signals. Tumors may not respond to molecules that inhibit the proliferation of normal cells, usually because of inactivation of tumor suppressor genes that encode component of these growth inhibitory pathways. Then there is altered cellular metabolism, that is Warburg effect. That is, the tumor cells, they undergo a metabolic switch to aerobic glycolysis, that is known as Warburg effect, which enables the synthesis of macromolecules and organelles that are needed for rapid cell growth. Then evasion of apoptosis should be there. Then limitless replicative potential, that is immortality. Tumors have unrestricted proliferative capacity and a stem cell-like property that permits tumor cells to avoid cellular senescence and mitotic catastrophe. Then sustained angiogenesis should be there so that they receive nutrient and they are able to metastasize. Then ability to invade and metastasize, that is ability to invade the surrounding stromal tissue and then they lead to metastasis. Ability to evade the host immune response. In normal circumstances, whenever there is a foreign cell, our body response, they leads to death of that cell. But in metastasis, in cancer cells, they have the ability to evade this process. The acquisition of genetic and epigenetic alteration that confer these hallmarks may be accelerated by genomic instability and cancer promoting inflammation. So these are the hallmarks of cancer which I have told you, that is there is cell death, there it is dysregulation of the cellular energetics, and there is sustained proliferative signal, avoid immune destruction, they evading growth suppressors, enable replicative mortality, tumor promoting inflammation is there, activating invasion and metastasis, genomic instability, this is the main feature of cancer, and then inducing angiogenesis. Now coming to the normal signaling pathway. Under physiologic conditions, growth factor signaling pathway, it can be resolved into following steps. First is there is binding of a growth factor to its specific receptor. Secondly, transient and limited activation of the growth factor receptor, which activates several cytoplasmic signal transducing proteins. Third is transmission of transduced signal to the nucleus via additional cytoplasmic effector proteins and second messengers or by a cascade of single transduction molecules. Then there is induction and activation of nuclear regulatory factors that initiate DNA transcription. Then expression of factors that promote entry and progression of the cell into the cell cycle, ultimately resulting in cell division. So this was the normal cycle. Aberrations in multiple signaling pathways have been identified in various tumors. Many components of these pathways, they act as oncoprotein when mutated, and a number of tumor suppressor genes act by inhibiting one or more component of these pathways. Now this is the diagrammatic representation of that signaling pathway. The growth factor receptors RAS, P13A make anticyclins. These are oncoproteins that are activated by mutations in various cancers. GAPs, they apply brake to this RAS activation, and PTAN, they serve the same function for P13K. Now the logic is that signal transducer RAS, which operates immediately downstream from receptor tyrosine kinases, and there are two signaling arms that are downstream of RAS the mitogen activated protein kinase, that is MAPK and pathway, and other is the phosphoinositol 3 kinase, that is P13K or AKT pathway. They appear to be particularly important. These two pathways, they are very important in promoting cancer cell growth. Most of the cancers, they have molecular defects. They affect one or more component of these pathways and lead to production of cancer. Binding of growth factor, it causes receptor dimerization and autophosphorylation of the tyrosine residues. Attachment of bridging protein couples the receptor to inactive GDP bound RAS, allowing the GDP to be displaced in favor of GDP and yielding activated RAS. This activated RAS, it interacts with and activates RAF, and this RAF, it phosphorylates MAPK, and activated MAP kinase phosphorylates other cytoplasmic proteins and nuclear transcription factors, generating cellular responses. The phosphorylated tyrosine kinase receptor can also bind other components such as P13K, which activates other signaling systems like AKT, and mTOR, which stimulates pro-growth metabolism and protein synthesis. Cyclins help in cell cycle progression. The cascade is turned off when the activated RAS eventually hydrolyzes GTP to GDP, converting RAS into inactive form. Aberrations in multiple signaling pathways have been identified in various tumors, and many components of these pathways, they act as oncoprotein when mutated. A number of tumor suppressor genes, they act by inhibiting one or more component of these pathways. Now, what are the proteins or what are the genes which are responsible for carcinogenesis? So first you should know what is proto-oncogene. The normal cellular gene whose products promote cell proliferation, they are proto-oncogenes. Oncogenes, they are mutated or overexpressed version of proto-oncogenes that function autonomously, having loss dependent on normal growth promoting signals. So the proto-oncogenes, they have multiple roles but all participate at some level in signaling pathway that drive proliferation. Now there are three things. First is oncogene, proto-oncogene, and the mutated form of it is oncogene, and a protein which is encoded by an oncogene that drives increased cell proliferation through one of several mechanisms and inactivate internal regulatory mechanism. This is the function of oncoprotein. They are freed from the normal checkpoints leading to excessive proliferation. Aberrations in multiple signaling pathways have been identified in various tumors. Many components of these pathways, they act as oncoprotein when mutated. Conversely, a number of tumor suppressors, they act by inhibiting one or more component of these pathways. Pro-growth oncoproteins, they act at various levels. They constitutively activate the autocrine loop. Tyrosine kinase pathway is complex and has downstream and two signaling arms which are mutated GFR, RAS, RAF, P13K, MYC and D cyclins. These are all oncoproteins and they act at various levels. It may be RAS, it may be P13, it may be MYC. One can be altered, two can be altered, all can be altered. So these are the various proteins which can be altered in carcinogenesis. Then GAP and PTAN, they apply brakes to these proliferation cycles. Oncogenes, they can be growth factors, they can act as growth factor receptors, they can be proteins which are involved in signal transduction. So the growth factors, they are like PDGF, TGF, FGF, which are involved in proliferation, like in astrocytoma and stomach cancer. Then they can be growth factor receptors, they can be proteins involved in signal transduction, they can be nuclear regulatory proteins which are transcriptional activators, and they can be cell cycle regulators like cyclins and CDK4. Now coming to the tumor suppressor genes. So when we have read the oncogenes which drive the proliferation of cells, the product of most tumor suppressor genes, they apply brakes to the cell proliferation, and abnormalities in this pathway leads to failure of growth inhibition. That is another hallmark of carcinogenesis. That is unlimited proliferation. That is the hallmark of carcinogenesis. Part of regulatory networks that recognizes genotoxic stress from any source and they respond by shutting down proliferation. This is the normal process, how they act as checkpoints whenever there is a stress, and they recognize the stress and they lead to shutting down the proliferation. So, expression of oncogene in normal cells with intact tumor suppressor genes, it leads to quiescence or permanent cell cycle arrest, that is oncogene induced senescence or growth inhibitory pathway which produce the cell into apoptosis in case of a normal tumor suppressor gene. They are involved in cell differentiation, that is post-mitotic pool without replicative potential. So, mechanism of action similar to mitogenic signals, growth inhibitory pro-differentiation signals, they originate outside the cell and use the receptors, then signal transducers and then nuclear transcription regulators to accomplish their effect. Similar to the pathway we have seen in the case of proliferation. Then tumor suppressor form portion of these networks. Thus, protein product of tumor suppressor genes may function as transcription factor, it may function as cell cycle inhibitor or signal transduction molecule, it may act as cell surface receptors and regulators of cellular response to DNA damage. Now there are two important tumor suppressor genes. One is retinoblastoma gene and other is p53 gene. So approximately 40% of retinoblastomas, they are familial with a predisposition to develop the tumor being transmitted as an autosomal dominant trait. Carriers of retinoblastoma trait have a 10,000-fold increased risk of developing retinoblastoma as compared to the general population, and that too in both the eyes, and are also at greatly increased risk of developing osteosarcoma and other soft tissue sarcomas. About 60% of retinoblastoma occur sporadically, virtually always unilateral, and such patients are not at increased risk for developing other forms of cancer. So there is two-hit hypothesis of oncogenesis in case of retinoblastoma. That is, two mutations involving both alleles of retinoblastoma. At chromosome locus 13q14, they are required to produce retinoblastoma. In familial cases, children inherit one defective copy of retinoblastoma gene in the germline and other copy is normal. Retinoblastoma develops when the normal retinoblastoma allele is mutated in retinoblast as a result of a spontaneous somatic mutation. Because such second hit seems to be virtually inevitable in a small fraction of retinoblasts, most individuals inheriting a germ-line defect in one retinoblastoma allele develop unilateral or bilateral retinoblastoma, and the disease is inherited as autosomal dominant trait. While in sporadic cases, both normal retinoblastoma alleles must undergo somatic mutation in the same retinoblast, that is, they require two hits to produce a cancer. So the probability of this event is very low, and loss of function mutation that is acquired in recessive fashion. So how the retinoblastoma gene it works? The decision of a cell to progress from G1 into S phase is of great importance, since once the cell cycle enters into the S phase, then it is must to complete mitosis. Then growth factor signaling pathways upregulate the activity of CDK and cyclin complexes and drive cell through the G1S transition, whereas growth inhibitors upregulate inhibitor. Retinoblastoma is the point of integration of these opposing signals, making it a key player in regulation of cell cycle progression. Loss of normal cell cycle control is central to malignant transformation. Now, this is the role of retinoblastoma gene in cell cycle. The hypophosphorylated retinoblastoma in complex with the E2F transcription factors binds to DNA, recruits chromatin remodeling factors, that is histone deacetylases and histone methyltransferases, and inhibit transcription of genes whose products are required for the S phase of cell cycle. When retinoblastoma is phosphorylated by the cyclin D or CDK4, cyclin D, CDK6 or cyclin E, CDK2 complex, it releases E2F. This E2F then activates transcription of S phase gene. The phosphorylation of retinoblastoma is inhibited by cyclin dependent kinase inhibitors because they inactivate cyclin CDK complexes. So, whenever there is cancer, it shows dysregulation of the G1S checkpoint as a result of mutation in one of the 4 genes that regulate the phosphorylation of retinoblastoma. These genes are retinoblastoma gene itself, CDK4, the genes encoding cyclin D proteins, transforming growth factor beta, and transforming other genes which leads to stoppage of transcription, that is transcription block. This I have told you, that is the proliferative role and anti-proliferative role of retinoblastoma. That is, either it is in the active hypophosphorylated state when it leads to proliferation, and if it is in inactive phase, it promotes cell cycle, that is when it is actively hypophosphorylated state, it leads to anti-proliferative state, and when it is inactive hyperphosphorylated state, it leads to promoting of cell cycle progression. So, there is loss of function mutation involving both retinoblastoma alleles, which leads to retinoblastoma formation. A shift from the active hypophosphorylated state to inactive hyperphosphorylated state by gain of function mutations that upregulate CDK, cyclin D activity, or loss of function mutations that abrogate the activity of CDK inhibitors. So the role of retinoblastoma in carcinogenesis, it is accomplished by many factors. First is the anti-proliferative effect of retinoblastoma is abrogated in cancers through a variety of mechanisms. First is loss of function mutations affecting retinoblastoma gene, then gene amplification of CDK4 and cyclin D gene, loss of cyclin dependent kinase inhibitors, then viral oncoproteins that bind and inhibit retinoblastoma, that is in case of E7 protein of HPV, that is human papilloma virus. Then there is another important gene, that is p53 tumor suppressor gene, which maintains the integrity of genome. It has a role in cell cycle arrest in G1 phase, induction of DNA repair, upregulation of transcriptional CDKN1A, and triggers apoptosis or senescence. This is the normal cell cycle, and there is role of various cyclins, cyclin D, E, A and B, going from phase D1 to S, D2 to mitosis, and there are inhibitors like INK4 and tumor suppressor gene p53. It plays an important role in all this cycle. Now p53 is also known as guardian of genome. P53, guardian of genome. It activates DNA repair proteins. This is sentinel of G1 to S phase transition and initiates apoptosis, mutated in more than 50% of all human cancers. Now, this is the diagrammatic representation of p53 tumor suppressor gene action, how it acts. So, activation of normal p53 by DNA damaging agents or by hypoxia, it leads to cell cycle arrest in G1 phase. The induction of DNA repair by transcriptional upregulation of cyclin dependent kinase inhibitors, that is CDKN1A, and coding the cyclin dependent kinase inhibitor and DD45 leads to cycle inhibition. When successful repair of DNA takes place, it allows the cell to proceed to the cell cycle, and if DNA repair it does not occur or it fails, then p53 triggers other apoptosis or senescence, leading to cell death. In cells with loss or mutation of p53, DNA damage does not induce cell cycle arrest or DNA repair, and genetically damaged cells, they proliferate, giving rise to malignant neoplasm. So this is the normal process on inducing of ionizing radiation, carcinogens or mutations. Whenever there is exposure to these carcinogens, then there is, in case of normal cycle, if DNA damage occur, it leads to rectify that defect by different means and ultimately lead to normal cell. If repair occurs, then normal proliferation occurs. But if the defect it fails to repair, then it leads to apoptosis. Or if the DNA damage on the other pathway, if p53 is abnormal, DNA damage occurs, it will be passed to the next cells and there is clone of cell, mutant cells is produced, leading to malignant tumor. So the function of p53 gene is DNA damage is sensed by ATM or ATR family kinases, phosphorylate p53 by liberating it from MDM2. Active p53 upregulate the CDK1, p21, cell cycle arrest P1S checkpoint, and then repair damage. So the main function of p53 is If there is a DNA damage, it should be corrected, and only after correction of DNA damage, the cell should undergo proliferation so that neoplasm cannot be produced. All the cells which are proliferating, they will be normal. On the other hand, if P53 is mutated, what happens if there is a DNA damage? It will not be corrected and it will be passed to the next generations, and there is clone of abnormal cells produced leading to cancer formation. Other tumor suppressor genes are APC, E-cadherin, CDK, N2A, PTEN, NF1, WT1, VHL, which are involved in different tumors. Now, because the cancer is produced by a clone of cells and such a large amount of cells, they require they require oxygen and nutrients for their growth. So the growth promoting alteration is there in the cellular mechanism that is known as Warburg effect. Even in the presence of ample oxygen, cancer cells demonstrate a distinctive form of cellular metabolism characterized by high level of glucose uptake and increased conversion of glucose to lactose, that is known as fermentation via the glycolytic pathway. This phenomenon is known as Warburg effect and also known as aerobic glycolysis, which is recognized in malignancies. Now, why Warburg effect occurs in cancer cells? Because aerobic glycolysis, it provides rapidly dividing tumor cells with metabolic intermediates which are needed for the synthesis of cellular components, whereas mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation does not. Metabolic reprogramming is produced by signaling cascades downstream of growth factor receptors, the very same pathway that are deregulated by mutations in oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes in cancer. So what happens normally? The quiescent cells, they rely mainly on the Krebs cycle for ATP production. If starved, autophagy, that is self-eating, is induced to provide a source of fuel. When stimulated by growth factors, normal cells markedly upregulate glucose and glutamine uptake, which provide carbon sources for synthesis of nucleotides, proteins, and lipids. In cancers, oncogenic mutations involving growth factor signaling pathways and other key factors such as MYC deregulate these metabolic pathways, and an alteration known as Warburg effect, it occurs. This is the diagrammatic representation of the same Warburg effect. In case of quiescent cell, it depends on the Krebs cycle. This I have told you. And this is in case of tumor, what happens? Because there is increased protein synthesis, increased requirement of nucleotide, amino acid synthesis, increased lipogenesis. So there is alteration at the various levels and the increased fermentation, and all of these, they lead to growth. So what happens? Mutations involving growth factor signaling pathways, they can lead to this Warburg effect. Then P13K or AKT signal upregulates the activity of glucose transporters and multiple glycolytic enzymes, increasing glycolysis. Receptor tyrosine kinase activity is altered, and transcription factors, for example MYC, deregulate metabolic pathways supporting anabolic metabolism and growth. A state of severe nutrient deficiency in which the cells arrest their growth and cannibalize their own organelles, proteins and membranes as carbon sources for energy is known as autophagy. Autophagy is present in case of malignancies because they require a lot of nutrients, and sometimes what happens, they acquire this nutrition by eating the surrounding cells. Then the next very important point is evasion of programmed cell death, because accumulation of neoplastic cells may result not only from activation of growth promoting oncogenes or inactivation of growth suppressing tumor suppressor gene, but also from mutations in genes that regulate apoptosis. Because if the apoptosis is hampered, the cells, they will live for a long time and there will be a bulk of cells always present. So how this happens, how there is evasion of apoptosis? Apoptosis can be initiated through intrinsic or extrinsic pathways, as you have read in previous chapters, both of which result in activation of a proteolytic cascade of caspases that destroys the cell. Abnormalities of both pathways are found in cancer cells, but lesions that incapacitate the intrinsic, that is mitochondrial pathway, it appears to be more important. In greater than 85% of follicular B-cell lymphomas, the anti-apoptotic gene, that is BCL2, is overexpressed due to a translocation, that is 14-18 translocation. Overexpression of other BCL2 family members such as MCL1 is also linked to cancer cell survival and drug resistance. So, evasion of programmed cell death is also very important hallmark of cancer. So first is activation of growth promoting oncogenes, so it leads to rapid proliferation. Then there is inactivation of tumor suppressor genes, so that the repair should not be repair does not occur, and tumor suppressors, they are not able to stop the cycle or replication. And mutations in genes regulating apoptosis, and apoptosis can be initiated through intrinsic or extrinsic pathway leading to, so apoptosis can be initiated through extrinsic or intrinsic pathway. Most important is intrinsic, that is mitochondrial pathway, leading to activation of proteolytic cascade and leading to programmed cell death. Abnormalities in both pathway, as I have told you, they can lead to carcinogenesis. This is intrinsic and extrinsic pathway of apoptosis. Intrinsic pathway, whenever there is stress, there is radiation injury, there is chemical exposure, it leads to DNA damage. And what happens whenever DNA damage occurs, the p53, it comes into action and it leads to BAX or BAC gene activation, and they lead to caspase activation and leading to cell death or apoptosis. On the other hand, extrinsic pathway, it leads to, whenever there is FASL, it comes and attaches to the receptor, it leads to activation of FADD, and death-induced signaling complex is activated, procaspase is converted into caspase 8, and ultimately leading to production of caspase 3, which leads to apoptosis. So this is the diagrammatic representation. So mechanism used by tumor cells to evade cell death is, first is loss of p53 gene leading to reduced function of pro-apoptotic factors, for example BAX and BAC gene. Then there is reduced egress of cytochrome C from mitochondria due to upregulation of anti-apoptotic factors, that is BCL2, BCLXL and MCL1. Loss of apoptotic peptidase activating factor 1, or upregulation of inhibitors of apoptosis. Then there is reduced CD95 level, inactivation of death-induced signals. Then anti-apoptotic gene BCL2 is overexpressed, or overexpression of MCL1, which is linked to cancer cell survival and drug resistance. So all of these, they give a immortality to the cancer cells. All cancer cells, they contain cells that are immortal and have limitless replicative potential. Three interrelated factors, they appear critical for this. First is evasion of senescence, evasion of mitotic crisis, and capacity for self-renewal. Now, evasion of senescence. The senescence is associated with upregulation of tumor suppressor genes such as p53 and INK4A or p16 because of accumulation of DNA damage. Tumor suppressor genes maintain retinoblastoma in hypophosphorylated state, favoring cell death. The retinoblastoma dependent G1 phase cell cycle checkpoint is disrupted in cancer cells by a wide variety of acquired genetic and epigenetic aberrations. Evasion of cells from mitotic cataphore is caused by telomere shortening. Replication of somatic cells which do not express telomerase lead to shortened telomeres. In the presence of competent checkpoints, cells undergo arrest and enter non-replicative senescence. But in the absence of checkpoints, what happened? DNA repair pathways such as the non-homologous and joining pathway, they are inappropriately activated, leading to formation of dicentric chromosomes. At mitosis, the dicentric chromosomes, they are pulled apart, generating random double-stranded breaks, which then activate DNA repair pathways, leading to the random association of double-stranded ends and the formation again of dicentric chromosomes. Cells undergo numerous rounds of this bridge fusion breakage cycle, which generates massive chromosomal instability and numerous mutations, they go on accumulating. If the cells, they fail to re-express telomerase, they eventually undergo mitotic cataphore and death. Re-expression of telomerase allows the cells to escape the bridge fusion breakage cycle, thus promoting their survival and tumorigenesis. So this is the diagrammatic representation of all these, how they escape senescence and mitotic cataphore, as I have told you how it occurs. Now, very important point of cancer is self-renewal. Means each time a stem cell divides, at least one of the two daughter cells, they remain as a stem cell, so they have a replicative potential. Division is of two types, symmetric division. Both daughter cells, they remain stem cells during embryogenesis. When stem cells are expanding or during times of stress, both of the daughter cells, they act as stem cells. So this is an example of symmetric division. Then asymmetric division, only one daughter cell remains a stem cell. The non-stem cell proceeds along some differentiation pathway, losing stemness but gaining one or more functions in the process. Such cells in a transit to differentiate are highly proliferative but eventually differentiate, stop dividing and extinguish themselves. So this is the origin of cancer cells with self-renewing capacity. Either they lead to formation of self-renewing population, then they lead to bulk tumor production, and third, they lead to low replicative potential population, that is again the self-renewing population. Low replicative potential, they have the capacity to self-renewal. On the other hand, if it is of high proliferation, then it leads to bulk tumor population. Cancer cells can arise from transformed tissue stem cells, or they can arise from extensive stemness, that is proliferating cells acquire mutation that confers stemness, like in case of granulocytic progenitors in APML. It is promyelocytic leukemia, acute promyelocytic leukemia. Now, origin of cancer cells with self-renewing capacity. In both instances, cancer stem cells, they undergo asymmetric cell divisions, producing committed progenitors that proliferate more rapidly than the cancer stem cells lacking self-renewal capacity. Then, limitless replicative potential. Cancer cells have stem cell-like properties which is acquired through transformation of normal stem cell or through genetic lesions that impart a stem cell-like state on a more mature cell, which leads to inactivation of senescence signals and reactivation of telomerase. Now, the very important feature of tumor is angiogenesis, because without angiogenesis they will not get the oxygen, they will not get the nutrients, and they will not able to metastasize. So angiogenesis is a must for carcinogenesis. Vascularization is essential for growth. Growing cancers stimulate new angiogenesis, that is new vessel formation. Perfusion supplies nutrients and oxygen and newly formed endothelial cells. They secrete growth factors which are responsible for further angiogenesis, controlled by balance between angiogenetic and anti-angiogenetic factors. Hypoxia triggers angiogenesis through HIF-1 alpha that leads to transcription of pro-angiogenic factors, that is angiogenic switch. Mutations involving tumor suppressors and oncogenes tilt the balance to angiogenesis. Transcription of VEGF is influenced by RAS or MAP kinase activity pathway. Then mutations in RAS or MYC upregulate the production of VEGF. But what happens in cancer? The tumor vasculature is not normal. The vessels are leaky and dilated. Tumor cells access to these abnormal vessels contribute to metastasis. Elevated levels of VEGF and FGF can be detected in serum and urine of cancer patients. VEGF inhibitors, they can be used to treat a number of advanced cancers and hence prolong the clinical course, but are not curative. They can prolong the clinical curative. Invasion and metastasis, another hallmark of malignancy, are the result of complex interaction between cancer cells and normal stroma. Major causes of cancer-related morbidity and mortality. Then metastatic cascade has two phases: invasion of extracellular matrix, vascular dissemination, homing of tumor cells, and colonization. So invasion, it depends on, first is there are steps in invasion. First is detachment, that is loosening up of the tumor cells from each other. Second is attachment to matrix component. Thirdly, they degrade the extracellular matrix like collagen, and then by the production of enzyme collagenases, and then they lead to migration of tumor cells to different sites. So first is dissociation of cancer cells from each other is the result of alterations in intercellular adhesion molecules, and this is the first step in the process of invasion. Then there is degradation of basement membrane and interstitial connective tissue, that is second step in invasion. This is the diagrammatic review, that is clonal expansion, growth and diversification and angiogenesis. They lead to metastatic subclone, additions to the invasion of basement membrane, passage to the extracellular matrix, intravasation. Then there is interaction with the host lymphoid cells, tumor embolus is produced, adhesion to the basement membrane leading to extravasation, metastatic deposit, it is coming out of the vessel, angiogenesis, and by these new formed blood vessels, they go to different sites and lead to growth there and leading to metastatic tumor formation. So first the tumor cells, they break the basement membrane, they come into the stroma by the help of cytokines, and they break the basement membrane of the vessel and come inside the vessel, form an embolus along with the platelets. They form an embolus in the vessel, and then they go and attach to a different site again with the help of enzymes. They break the basement membrane and then they come outside the vessel by the effect of cytokines, and then they start proliferating there, and with the help of a newly formed blood vessels they spread to the different sites leading to metastasis. Same the diagrammatic representation. Till the formation of tumor cell embolus, the platelets they come and adhere to the tumor cells, and the host lymphocytes they also come and adhere, and they form an embolus, and with the help of embolus they pass through the vessel and they are attached to a different site. Same I have explained to you. Then sequence of events in the invasion of epithelial basement membrane. Tumor cells they detach from each other because of reduced adhesiveness and attract inflammatory cells. Proteases is secreted by the tumor cells, and inflammatory cells they degrade the basement membrane. Bridging of tumor cells to proteolytically generating binding sites and tumor cell is the main step in migration. So first is loosening of the intercellular junction. Second is there is attachment to the basement membrane and release of enzymes which leads to breakage of the basement membrane. And when there is cleavage in the basement membrane, there is break in the basement membrane. By the effect of various cytokines, the cell is able to pass into the stromal tissue, and then it goes in direction of vessel. So the third step in invasion involves changes in the attachment of tumor cells to extracellular proteins. Locomotion is the final step of invasion, propelling tumor cells through the degraded basement membrane and zones of matrix proteolysis. The site at which circulating tumor cells they leave the capillaries to form secondary deposits is related to the anatomic location and vascular drainage of the primary tumor and tropism of particular tumors for specific tissues. Most tumors they arrest in the first capillary bed they encounter. Liver and lung they are the most commonly encountered beds. Chemokines have an important role in determining the target tissue for metastasis. The target tissue may be non-permissive environment for the growth of tumor seedlings, that is unfavorable soil, and in this case the metastasis does not occur. The neoplastic cells they are not able to grow here. Skeletal muscle and spleen are rarely sites of metastasis, although well vascularized. So it also depends on the soil where the target cells, where the cancer cells they are able to grow there or not, because it depends on the environment of the cells, environment of the tissue where the cells have migrated. Some tumors show tumor tropism due to expression of adhesion or chemokine receptors whose ligands are expressed by endothelial cells at metastatic site. Genes that promote epithelial mesenchymal transitions like twist or snail may be play important role in metastasis genes or metastasis.